Spectrovision Radio.
Welcome to Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs, the biggest podcast in the universe where we talk about all the things they said weren't real. And my name is Tom Maxwell, and I'm joined by my beloved colleagues, Mallory Everton and Jordan Peterson. Not that Jordan Peterson.
The better
Different
one.
The different, better version.
My ego needs it to be the better one.
Today, we're going to talk about an update on the Loch Ness Monster, a new UFO documentary that's making waves, and Mal has an update on the problematic YouTuber named James that we've been following.
Maybe never has the word problematic been more appropriately deployed.
Listen, this has been a journey, everybody. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to refresh for people who might just be tuning in or may have forgotten. We haven't chatted about him in 2 weeks now, I think, and a lot has happened in the past 2 weeks. So basically a few months ago, it was in the middle of September, we became aware of a guy with 0 following on YouTube, just went by the handle James, who claimed to have a UFO in his possession. And it was like and please chime in at any point, guys, if I'm missing something. It was a silver cylinder about a meter or so long, and it had runes all around the tips on either side, and he claims to have seen it flying while he was driving near Vegas. Then it crash landed, and he found it in the sand. And then he proceeds to take it home and do tests on it, and he is just a dude, which is part of the reason that it was interesting. It was very interesting. We talked about it basically like it was Schrodinger's UFO, I guess, the whole time, that it was like...
Yeah.
If this is real, it's the biggest news ever. And if it's fake, it's the dumbest thing we should never have wasted breath on.
Well, sort of, though. But like it was so entertaining. And what I really enjoyed about it, when early on, we talked about it with Rich Haddam. And then Mal, as a performer, you were like, I'm really interested in the character. Mm-hmm. Right.
Totally.
I'm not going to make a judgment about whether or not it's real. I'm really interested in how this guy is basically doing character development with a prop. Mm-hmm. And that was I thought a really interesting and rich angle to assess it.
Yeah,
and I had a lot of interest in it, like in a just a formal sense. Like I loved the idea of this being like an artifact of the internet, and the way like what we assumed the guy's age might be, and how this kind of thing might have happened, and the way that he was putting it together, and all the decisions that would have gone into how to roll this thing out, and also the tiny size of the audience and the way that he interacted with them. And it was
0 following when he started.
Yeah.
Like first video he ever puts up is a video of him being like, I have a UFO. I saw it in the sky. You know what I mean? And it's just a guy in his bare feet in his backyard in cinder block basement, and there doesn't seem to be much thought or sophistication going into this sometimes. Like the tests run the gamut from an official Geiger counter measurement to radio frequency tests to him spraying it with water and noting that a ladybug landed on it.
He
and
played
playing the
Don't
guitar
Fear the
for
Reaper.
it. Yes, playing the guitar for it for 25 minutes. He never shows his face. He says over and over again that he feels sick around the object, that he doesn't want that he doesn't want to die. He doesn't want money. He just wants the object to end up in the right hands. And he was building in paranoia, and the Geiger counter readings were off the charts, according to him.
But he would never show
rash
us.
on his leg.
We never saw it fly.
An image of the reading that some other YouTuber had uncovered at one point. We also didn't see it fly. We saw a picture of it in the sky. Anytime a helicopter or plane seemed to fly low, he'd note that. And then there was a very odd incident that we did talk about a couple weeks ago where he claimed to be chased in the middle of the night, a high-speed chase from a dark-skinned winged bat creature human.
Which we never saw.
We never saw, we never heard. He said it was screeching. I mean, the whole thing was so strange. It felt stranger than fiction, as they say. Then on Friday, November 14th, he did a live stream where he attempted to open the thing. In normal James form, he had 0 pomp and circumstance or concern for his audience getting bored. He set up the camera with a view of the cylinder and on 2 sawhorses, and then left to apparently eat something for 20 minutes, and then came back and started drilling into the thing. And almost immediately saw a light appear in the reflection of the cylinder, and he turned to see an electric blue light behind him, stumbled back, and then based on a series of horrible sounds that came out of him. Sounded like he had a grand mal seizure. And then another 20 minutes of video after that, mostly a black screen, strange sounds, and nothing sensational, but odd flickering lights as well before the stream went dead. I'm just going to say, when I watched it, I felt so sick and skin crawlingly revolted. I couldn't sleep all night afterward because I felt, as did many people, horrified by the prospect that I had just listened to a man die.
Emerson and I watched it, and we felt a type of horror that went beyond even the very unpleasant idea that we were watching someone who was grievously injured or had died. There was something, it seemed to us as if a certain kind of sound, like ultrasound, was being transmitted through the live stream that had a very negative effect. And in fact, the way that people described feeling watching the video, sleeplessness, horror, dread, nausea, anxiety, conforms to how ultrasound makes people feel. And so there was a whole discussion about that before the big reveal. But I'll just say in the 3 days that there was nothing happening and everyone was like, holy is this guy dead?
Right.
There was a discussion about like, what the heck was that about? It was a very disturbing video.
Yeah, it was extremely disturbing. And over the course of the next 3 days, I happened to be traveling for work. I had a road trip, and so I ended up tuning in for a lot of this. There's a YouTuber named Polarity James that Tom sent us a video. He did an update about, like, honestly, within like 2 hours of James uploading his live stream. And then over the next 2 days, he did 2 separate 6-hour live streams trying to break down any clues in all of the videos with all of his followers, kind of pulling things from Reddit and all over the place, trying to make sense of where this guy might be in case he was in serious trouble.
Seriously.
Or his neighborhood might be in serious trouble if there is a radioactive object.
At least one Redditor documentarian drove. They sort of doxed James in his house, and one guy drove there, and it was basically to conduct a wellness check.
Totally. Yeah. And then the Vetted YouTube channel he posted a video on Sunday calling it out as a total hoax. And then it wasn't until Monday. So he drilled into it on Friday, and on Monday, James did another 90-second live stream of him stumbling around a parking lot, claiming that the phone he was going on live on wasn't his, which, when you think about it, is pretty weird. You're going to post a 90-second live stream on someone else's phone. You don't know where you are, and you don't know what happened, but you remember your YouTube.
Yes. Yep.
And he claims, that it wasn't his phone, that he needed to throw it away. Then another vague update of him walking around the woods. And then I think it was within 24 hours, then the big reveal, a long stream answering people's questions about what he was referring to just absolutely, like, repulsively as his content. That's just like, And it was like a slow, odd unveiling, because I think this is my take, I think he was continuing to try to, like, hold on to the bit for as long as he could. So he was like, I don't even care that I'm the most hated man on the internet, which is also... He doesn't have that many subscribers, and not that many people were aware of this. But he confusingly claimed that he only did it just to prove how gullible people were, but then also claimed to not remember the video with the light or the seizure at all. And he said he didn't have the object anymore and that he had to turn it in or something. And so then all the people in the comments were like, oh, maybe he's under duress. He's been forced to turn it in. Like, this is him being silenced. Right, and then he did another interview. He did an interview with a guy. I didn't even take the time to trouble myself to figure out exactly who he was talking to, but he was talking to a guy, I think another YouTuber or content creator.
It might have been the guy that drove out to his house.
It might have been about how he faked the Geiger counter stuff, like what was going on when the lights were flashing in his house, which he actually claimed was a total accident. But he still claimed to not be able to talk about how he faked the light video. And to me, that's just a man not wanting to keep some of the mystery alive. But truly, it made my skin crawl listening to it as he was like, I've done a little bit of local theater, and I'm hoping that people enjoyed the entertainment and that they might convert into letting me do like comedy and stuff. And I was like, ah!
Why did it make your skin crawl, Mel?
First of all, I was half right. I was half right when I thought it would be funny if he was just trying to launch his guitar career by like claiming to have a UFO. Okay, it makes my skin crawl for many reasons. But what were you going to say? What was your your question?
You're a performer, and you were always looking at this on some level as this could be performance art. This person is creating a character. I'm really in awe that he's so freaking boring. And so
I love that.
And so guileless. And then if I had to guess, I mean, people with kids will understand if you're out somewhere and you look around and your small child is not within view and the ice cold shock of panic that runs through your bloodstream. And you're frantically trying to find them or whatever. And you're like just trying to make a deal with a higher power to please not let this be, permanent. And then you find them and you're super freaking mad. Why did you do that? Where did you come from? So there's the instant relief of like, oh God. And then there's the like, I'm gonna suspend you from a well. So that's how I felt about James. I was like, you bastard. Like I literally thought you were dead, bro.
I mean, it's a little different than your analogy because it's sort of like, what if your kid had pretended to hang themselves and thought that would be funny? And then you're relieved that they weren't, but also like, shoot, my kid thinks that's funny. And what am I going to do about that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, first of all, if you're claiming that it's entertainment, okay. And the truth is that it really the only like deeply objectionable thing is that one video. That one video that, of course, is the reason that people started talking about it. So I guess there's a lot of darkness surrounding that for me because that's the thing that other people might want to copy, that people might want to do now that they like have seen that it quote unquote worked for this guy. So like my big questions are about two things. One, net good. Would I say that this guy has done net good in the world? Like overall, is there an increase of goodness in the world because this exists? And I would not say yes anymore. And it's in part because I don't think that being like, I just did it to prove how gullible you are. Let's call it entertainment for a second. Maybe I'm a snob. I don't care. Art should have a point. Like, it should have a point. You should be pointing to something that you love or care about in some way. Even if it's horror, even if it's dark, even if it's, like, uncovering something. There's supposed to be a reason. And if you were thoughtless enough to think that, like, the outcome of the action here wouldn't be that people would be more cynical, then that is something you should have thought about before you started. That actually what you wanted to do was reveal that people thinking that it was disturbing and scary and bad that somebody may have died while touching the unknown, which is like whether or not you believe that this cylinder could be a UAP, we do believe in the unknown as a human race. We do understand that when we touch things we don't understand, sometimes they kill us. And so like, the fact that he's now just created more people that he can be like, nah, bro, not real, fake. When somebody claims something is happening, something real is happening, I think that's bad. I think it makes people less empathetic, less compassionate, and more likely to be afraid that they're going to be made a fool when someone tells them an unbelievable story. And the truth is that it's not just this type of story that sometimes feels unbelievable. Like I keep thinking, and I made a comment to you guys about this, but like if he had done this with something like sexual assault, say, nobody would think that that was entertainment. It would just be another person making more people doubt people who come forward about being sexually assaulted, which cannot be proved most of the time.
Yeah.
So like he's just increased the number of people who are going to be like, oh yeah, that person's just full of shit. About things that could possibly happen. And I guess that's very frustrating and sad to me.
So this also strikes me though as a very deeply authentic artifact of internet culture, because what you get is you get this, the internet as a kind of, I don't know if I'm using this word right at this point, but I like it anyway, is the egregore of the internet produces this kind of thing, which is not good. It's not necessarily bad. It's kind of this agent of chaos. And agents of chaos can be good. They can sort of catalyze growth, but they often just hurt people and then leave them behind. And like, I think that this is a pretty good example of something that emerges from the egregore of the internet. And if you kind of try to tease apart all of its DNA, what you find is someone who does not have the artistic maturity to understand what they're actually doing. And they have this sort of like knee-jerk reaction of like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. It's very impulsive. It doesn't really have any like direct idea or thought, and at once it makes it very believable because it feels very authentic, because it feels non-artificial, because on some level it's not. It's somebody who's just like operating by pure impulse and instinct. I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to do this thing, and like not at all thinking about consequences, certainly not thinking about the people on the other side of the screen as people. They are rather a resource to be exploited in some way. And part of the ugliness of the internet is that the best way to exploit the other people on the internet is to treat them as though they are not a resource to be exploited, to treat them as though they are real people, which is why you then get this sort of, and again, it felt sort of instinctive to me, is that the way that he communicated with his audience, the way that he communicated with his commenters, the way that he kind of like, owned certain things and tried to be more authentic with them, because that's the way that you best exploit the people who are showing up to watch your quote unquote content. And so what it does is it just creates this environment of deep, deep intrinsic inauthenticity, which is very corrosive of trust. So I'm not going to go out here and say the internet is evil. It is a technology. It is a vast and extremely sophisticated and very culture-defining and altering technology. And what technology is a force multiplier on human intention. And so we have amazing things that can happen with the internet, amazing, beautiful intentions, human intentions that can be magnified like crazy and create immense good in the world, which we've seen so much of in the past, like however many decades that we've lived with this technology. But we're at this very late stage now where we also we have lots of examples of horrible evil that has been sort of sprung upon the world as a full force multiplier of human intention. And it doesn't even have to be, and here's the thing that's really scary about it. It doesn't have to be evil intention. Like, I'm not going to look at James and be like, this guy's a monster. He's a villain. I'm like, no. He really is just a guy who is operating by a set of rules that he downloaded from the internet. Like, he is a product of this culture, of this technology on a very deep level. And so the things that he is springing into the world with the force multiplier of this technology are evil, but not because he's evil. It's an emergent phenomenon. And so my final take on this entire story is that I think we should probably leave it behind, because I think that this is a pretty good example of something that is, I think it's more harmful than good. And there's a lot of UFO, UAP type stories, artifacts, etc., that fall in this category of chaotic and dismantling or disruptive in a way that is not healthy. And so in order to make any progress at all on trying to understand UFOs or, any kind of the phenomenon of consciousness that we love talking about, like, you can't spend time on this kind of thing, because it's sort of designed to make you crazy and more cynical and more distrustful of other people.
And one of the worst things that he said, I think, in his interview with the guy was basically like, I mean, it was fun. I hope people had fun. And like, next time you see something, it might be me. Like, he's like, you know what I mean? Like, I'd like to do this again, which is also like, other people are going to repeat. Like, other people are going to want to repeat it. And
absolutely.
I think that's the unfortunate thing. I agree that he's not evil and that he's a product of our time. But I think that, just to return to Tom's question about like, why do you hate like the did you all like the content thing, is because a lot of the time that's just another way of saying, do I get to be rich now? Do I get to be famous now? And to me, I love what you're talking about, Jordan, with like thoughtlessness when it comes to what we're creating. It's one thing to make like a fun, silly, absurd thing. It's another thing to approach a dark or complex or potentially very triggering topic with nothing but shock value and like wanting to create twists and turns. Like, I remember having a really really visceral response when there was a show called 13 Reasons Why that came out a couple years ago, and it was basically like a show about a teen that had died by suicide and then had basically written to the 13 people who were responsible for that kid's suicide. Like, you're the reason why. You're the reason why. You're the reason why. And I was like, there is like nothing about this that is okay. Like, this is being made because it's a shocking, horrible topic, and it's being made badly, without thought. And you have to be extremely talented to be able to approach certain topics with any amount of like human goodness and decency, enough that it like actually could catalyze into something positive for us. And I think the unfortunate thing is did you like the content? Do I get to be famous now? Did I shock you enough? It means that you made it about you. And really, this stuff needs to be about us. It needs to be about us. And anyway, that's just going to be gross forever to me. That's just going to be gross forever.
I was trying to imagine how it would have been okay, how he could have made this thing okay. I was actually talking to Carly about this because I was trying to tell her she hasn't been following as closely as we have, amazingly.
Sure.
And so I was like, what would have made it okay is if he had come out after that, at the point at which he came out and said this is all a hoax, if instead of the way he did it, he actually just came out and said, okay, all right, jig is up, guys. Here's everything that I did. This was a lot of fun, but I'm going to end it now. And just was like really generously transparent about everything. And like really just laid it all out, like why I started doing it. Why, that is the only way that you can essentially buy back all of the trust that you've burned, right? But that's not how he did it. Like he continued, like you said, Mallory.
He would still need to probably just straight up apologize for faking his death, though. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know that. And you want to know how I faked my death? Wasn't it cool?
Well, here's the thing: if he had done it that way, with that spirit of like total transparency and like sort of, I mean, there's a degree of generosity, of respect for your audience when you do something like that, is that he would have gotten back feedback that he would then have cared about, right? And people are like, hey,
fair.
dude, like, you faked your own death. Like, that wasn't actually great. Like, we didn't have a good time with that. And he would have been listening because that's the spirit with which he would have brought the disclosure of his hoax. Like, I'm okay with everything that he did up to the point where he started coming clean, because the spirit with which he came clean was exploitative. Like, that's the reason that you got so angry, because it was like, oh, it was clear all along that you didn't care at all about your audience, like at all. And that's the part that sucks. It's like this. That's the contract that has been broken. Is that like we showed up because it seemed like there was a relationship here, and what it turned out was actually you were just abusing us.
When you were talking about a force multiplier, I immediately thought of this card in my beloved Atelia Tarot deck, which is this, and it's called Force Majeure. So when you see this card in a layout, it sort of like multiplies the power of the cards around it. It's also the devil. And it's also a representation of a 4chan troll, which is exactly who this guy is. The last time that we talked about him, I remember going like, let's interview him, Yep. We'll tell him that we bear witness, that we just like bear witness and we don't judge and all this stuff. And for a second, I was like ashamed. I was like, and I saw a lot of this on Reddit, like the people who spoke with the most confidence and braggadocio were the people who are like, lol, it's a hoax, losers. Yeah. You got taken. Right. Like empathy shaming. And I'm like, that's not the world I want to live in. Oh, I don't want to live in that world.
Empathy shaming.
That's great.
Yes.
There was a lot of empathy shaming.
Yeah.
And so I felt it for a second too, like, we kind of like...
Oh, me too. Me too.
We wear our hearts and we just got embarrassed. But then, but what I'm like now is like, I would so much rather be me and in the company of you than this thing where you're just like, all I want to do is take advantage of people and then spike the ball. And that makes me feel good. Like, no.
Let's talk about what trolls are good for. Trolls are good for a funny story from a distance. Trolls are not great traveling companions. So that's, I think, where we're at, right? It's like we spent some time in the same room on the same road with a troll without knowing it was a troll. I would have been fine about hearing this story from a distance. I didn't want to be on the road with him. You know what I mean?
It makes me think of a couple things. One, you got to take the chance and you got to kind of go down that road when you're talking about this phenomenon, because it requires a suspension of disbelief. It requires not credulity, but open-mindedness, right?
Yes.
And vulnerability and curiosity. And that is a kind of investment that you can lose, right? It may not pay off. It very often doesn't pay off. There's a lot of hoaxing. There's a lot of misidentification, whatever the case may be. A lot of these phenomena present themselves as very, very peculiarly subjective, and they happen to individuals, and you're listening to a lot of personal narratives.
Yes.
Not all of which are going to hold up to scrutiny. The other thing, and we did that, we made that investment, and we said the whole time, could be fake, could be a hoax, could be fake.
Absolutely, we did.
We don't
Absolutely,
know.
We
okay,
did.
so fine. That's the way that hand played. That's fine. That's not the game. That's just that hand. But what it reminded me of and what it made me think of from a larger perspective is how much I despise the freaking UFO phenomenon. It's all half-truths, myth-truths, like outright lies, misdirection, hoaxes, psyops. It's that all the way down. You never get a straight answer. And then you also get sucked in. It feels like you get sucked into something that is energetically bad, like not good.
Well, Tom, can I
Speaking of,
segue us onto
Let's
May
talk
I
about
suck
the age
some
of
of your
disclosure.
energy? Yes, I
Take
would love
us
to,
down.
I would
Force
love to,
majeure.
to slurp up some more of your energy with my.
yum, 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 yum.
I love it. Keeps me going.
Here comes the energetic vampires.
So a couple of months ago, right around the time we signed with SpectreVision, the three of us shared a stage at the Philosophical Research Society in Los Angeles with a few fellow podcasters, including Danny Sheehan, who, if our listeners are unfamiliar with him, is this really big deal attorney who's also deeply connected to the whole disclosure movement and conversation. So Danny has helped stand up a group called Citizens for Disclosure, which helped organize several screenings across the country of a film that has gotten a lot of buzz in the UFO community over the last year or so. It's called The Age of Disclosure.
The American people are ready to receive the truth.
Humanity is not the only intelligence in the universe.
Humanity is not the only intelligent species.
We are absolutely not alone.
Non-human intelligence exists.
UAPs are real, they're here, and they're not human. I spent 25 years as a senior official with the CIA.
I worked on highly classified UAP programs.
28 years as an astrophysicist.
I served as the 4th Director of National Intelligence.
Director of Aviation Security in the National Security Council.
A one-star admiral after 32 years of service.
People that come forward with this, I feel like they've taken their life in their own hands.
Long story short, I went to a screening over the weekend. Danny Sheehan was there. The theater was sold out. It was a time. I figured it would be appropriate to return with a quick review and recap of that experience. Big part of the reason I went is because we're doing this podcast and I felt like it would be a good thing to report on. So the event started out at a restaurant a few blocks away where a bunch of people gathered to shake hands with Danny, enjoy an overpriced buffet, and listen to him share some thoughts before the showing. The main point that stuck out to me about his thoughts that he shared was when he emphasized that everything in the film was information that had been approved by the Department of Defense. In other words, this was not a film full of whistleblowers. It was a collection of declassified information presented by the people who had the most credibility to share that information. He said that the main purpose of the film was to convince its audience of the urgency of continuing to ask questions. After the dinner, we walked over to the theater. I took a seat in the middle of an empty fourth row, because I knew the screening was sold out, so I knew I wouldn't be alone for very long, and I wasn't. I'll set the scene. On my right, a woman who mumbled quietly to herself and then, with no provocation or introduction, showed me a video on her phone of a grainy video with a lens flare. On my left, a wealthy political operator who claimed to have helped get one of the people in the film elected and then described himself as a pretty hardened skeptic, and he was only there on behalf of his wife, who was a believer. After some embarrassing technical difficulties that are the hazard of an independent theater, the film got started. I had a good time. I also fell asleep about an hour into it. I wasn't sure whether I should say that. I wasn't sure if I should admit that. Here's the thing. I had not gotten enough.
Always
I had
Same.
not.
Okay. The actual
not,
title of the film is not Age of Disclosure. It's ASMR Disclosure.
ASMR disclosure.
Just that little ASMR disclosure.
The music and the panning shots and the guy talking about information that can't
Those
be disclosed.
binaural
Like,
beats that really
like,
just
oh, I'm so tired.
just float away on a cloud of.
Well, on some level, that's not a terribly inaccurate description, just because, well, several things conspired to put me to sleep about an hour into it. Is that I had not gotten enough sleep the night before. The theater was dark. It was late. I am a person who goes to sleep now around 10 o'clock every night because that's 3 children, as it turns out, are a handful. Anyway, so it wasn't that the film was boring. It was not the most exciting film, but also there were a lot of things that I had heard before and some things that I hadn't, because I am not quite as deeply soaked in this conversation as many other people are. Here's the thing. If people want like a real breakdown of the film, go listen to a different podcast. There are lots of podcasts out there who are doing really, really good, thorough deconstructions of this movie. The only thing I really want to say is I think that if people have an interest in this topic at all and don't feel like they have like a really good grasp on what the current state of the conversation around UFO government disclosure is, this is a really great introduction to that. Like a really, really, really good one. There is a host, literally a couple of dozen of extremely credible people, like people who you would be very tempted to believe in any other circumstance. People who have held extremely prominent positions, people who have very good educations, people who are extremely well-spoken, people who are not crazy. And are not saying crazy things. Well, they're saying things that might sound crazy if you have no exposure to this topic, which is why it seems like it's an important thing to have been made. You know, we've talked a lot about our opinions collectively and individually of the disclosure movement, so-called, a government disclosure of UFOs and UAP and blah, 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 blah. My personal opinion is that it is a very fun narrative to watch. I do think that it's important, if only because, and I think this is the tack a lot of people I really respect are taking, among whom Danny Sheehan, which is this idea that for 80 years, there have been plenty of things that have been known about, have been talked about, have been studied, that have not been disclosed. And that sucks. As a citizen of a country that supposedly values transparency and supposedly has representative government, to find out that basically on the back of this topic, it's like, no, you don't have representative government. Basically, it's a fiction. Basically, you have whatever we feel like whoever, right? And I hate that it turns out that the country that I belong to, that I have felt that I still feel a lot of patriotism toward, it turns out that like a big swath of it, like really important features of this community this big nation community that I'm part of, have been tightly controlled by elite people who are in the shadows. Like, that sucks to find out about. And a lot of people become very, very cynical when they find out about that. And I'm not cynical. I'm not a cynic, but I do think that I think it's worthwhile pushing this conversation forward for that reason. And a big component of that is this idea that there are technologies that would be really, really useful on a societal level, to get us, for instance, off of fossil fuels. That would be great. You know,
Sure.
Things that could be a big deal in moving us along technologically and so forth. I think that those are conversations that are very worth having. Do I depend on them for my personal well-being and happiness? Absolutely not, because it is not my conversation. It's not my responsibility. I don't have really any control over it. That said, and I'll end with this, I want to make sure I get this out and I don't forget. Citizens for Disclosure is a group of people. It is a movement, whatever you want to call it, that you can like actually go join. We'll include a link in the show notes. You can go and put your name in, put your information in, tell them in what way you feel like being involved or not. There's lots of different things that you can do. If this is the only way that motivates you to be civically engaged, then so be it. Because what this is really about is, I cannot emphasize this enough, holding people accountable who we elect to make decisions for us. And this goes for on the local level and on the state level, and on the national level. We are in a very bad place right now with civic engagement. Almost no one is civically engaged. And as a result, the people that we elect to lead us, to make the big decisions that actually do have an impact on our lives, they are incredibly unaccountable. They lie constantly. They are so corrupt. And it would be great if we could hold them more responsible for the things that we care about. So if this is going to be the thing that could motivate you to do that, do it. Sign up for Citizens for Disclosure and let's say, hey, guess what? Here's your representative. Here's who's up for election on this thing. Are they going to commit to transparency on this issue? Anyway, I will let that rest, but I signed up for it. I feel really good about it. I think that there are a lot of issues that I care enough about to vote based on, but like this could be the big one. This is the nonpartisan thing. Like, this is not a partisan issue. This has nothing to do with left and right. This has nothing to do with liberal or conservative, nothing to do with Democrat or Republican. This is literally about transparency about stuff that matters to everybody. So that's my pitch.
Okay. I'm not going to lie, Jordan. Does sound like it's probably boring.
I think it's less boring than people expect. That's what I'll say.
So the people that we should recommend this to are the people who are just wondering what the state of affairs is. Maybe they caught the congressional hearing 2 years ago and they're just curious. So how legit are aliens now? Where are we at with the official conversation?
At the end of the
That makes
screening,
sense.
I didn't need to ask the woman on my right. I didn't need to ask what her experience was because I could hear it. But I asked the guy on my left, I was like, so what'd you think? And he said, very compelling, which I thought was a real endorsement.
Yeah.
Considering
from
where
a
he was
guy who
coming
said
from.
that he was suspicious.
A hardened skeptic.
Hardened.
Yeah.
Skeptical.
So your quote about like civic engagement struck me because there's that line in the Declaration of Independence where they talk about the purpose of government at all, to do anything. And then they say, to secure these rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And we're not just talking about disclosure here of non-human intelligence or technology or whatever. We're actually literally talking about the purpose of collectivizing in the form of a centralized government. And you said, we're in a really bad time. And I think we're actually emerging from a really bad time. And I think there's a lot of evidence that people are going like, yeah, no, I expect more. We can do better. Oh, and by the way, we have the power. Because people who want to hoard power for themselves want you to believe that you don't have it as a collective group, as a group.
Yeah.
Not the case, never been the case. So, yes, so to that. The only thing that interests me, that I find really resonant about this documentary and this sort of subject in general, is that we are now at a place culturally in our society where we can just say it's real, right? We don't have none of this freaking gaslighting. You're nuts. I don't believe you. You're a kook. You're a crank. That's been dumped on our heads for almost the past century. That doesn't hold anymore, right? We can actually just go like, okay, there is enough evidence to know that this phenomena is real. And I feel that in our show that we do fundamentally accept that remote viewing is real, that, psychic powers are real, that ghosts, whatever we call ghosts, are real, that some cryptids are real. It's not that we're, credulous, but we don't have to argue the point or prove the inherent validity of the thing itself before entering into a discussion about it.
Yeah.
That's what I like about this.
Absolutely. And I will say, though, just to bite back a little bit, not at you, but at the people who do still, after everything, are still doing these sort of ridicule, dismissive, like, whatever. The New York Times, the source of the sort of like maybe original dam-breaking moment in 2017 where people were like, their review of The Age of Disclosure was just this 4-paragraph nonsense by one of their resident film reviewers, who I will just read the last paragraph. The Age of Disclosure sneakily slips from those officials' arguments for transparency into the realm of pure speculation. If you don't believe that extraterrestrials surveil our planet in bubbles that can warp time and space, the movie suggests that you've simply fallen victim to a government disinformation campaign intended to make people skeptical of UAPs. Hasn't Hollywood, described as part of that effort, done precisely the opposite? Question the film and you're a chump, it implies. But anyone who sits through its nearly 2 hours of unprovable claims is a chump of a different sort. And I was just like...
Who's the chump?
I was just kind of seeing red a little bit. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it feels like, I'm like, this is... Anyway, I'm speechless. I'm like, you can't... How can you say that? Like, and I did sit through the 2 hours of the thing, and I kind of fell asleep because it didn't seem that incredible to me, because it turns out that this stuff has been in the water for a long time now.
Oh my goodness, such a long time.
And I felt like this is such a great indicator of like how hard it is to shift cultural perception around a topic. I do think that it is becoming something that people can talk about, absolutely. But it's still something that the freaking New York Times will publish a 4-paragraph nonsense review that concludes with, "You're a chump if you watch this movie."
You can't be the paper of record by saying, "I don't know." Right?
Yeah.
You have to take this sort of imperious, like, well, the plebes are buying this line, you know, but we don't, you know, and it's not necessarily antipathy or an adversarial relationship when people act this way. I see it more as a symptom of their devout need to not go through any ontological shock. Because if you crack the door and go, I don't know, maybe, it could just let in a whole lot of stuff that is so foundationally scary to you and so threatening to your worldview, or so destructive of your worldview, that you just can't roll with that at all. So that door stays shut, and everyone who doesn't think that there's not even a door there is highly suspect or a fool. Yeah. And in a way, I'm like, okay, I get it. You know, we all have to let it in our own way. I understand.
Absolutely. And that's a generous and appropriate way of responding. I think I get triggered by meanness in general, and so the sort of smug, dismissive tone is always going to light me up, which on some level I think it's supposed to. I am the victim of the intention of essentially triggering people like me.
We've been so trained and raised to accept the wisdom and information that is handed down to us and to hold our own experiences to give them lesser value. That's just got to change, because not everyone who's giving you the line has your best interests at heart. And it doesn't have to be about ghosts or fairy lights or UFOs. There's a lot in this culture which is, don't believe your lying eyes. What you believe happened to you did not happen to you. That's not the way it is. It was more like this, and don't talk about it. And that's just profoundly unhealthy in many, many ways. So, people like us talking about things like this in a way that is where we're not throwing shade or shaming people, that's just sort of how we move forward.
Yes, I mean, there's a reason why I feel like we so often just end up talking about philosophy on this podcast, because this just touches on what it is to have a dominant belief as a culture and how we handle the way individuals will engage with that dominant belief. And that dominant belief is almost always incomplete. There might be elements that are helpful or useful to us, or that help us stay connected in some way or another, but we are just grasping at straws a lot of the time with the latest dominant ideas. And the questions I have, I guess, about this are, how we develop more patience and understanding, given the fact that this takes the amount of time it takes. And it's understandable that it does, because there are reasons why people take a moment or take a beat before they feel ready to let some of this ontological stress in. The reason why this topic is just like, it tends to sprawl into every corner of my life once we start talking about it. I can think about how the dominant belief for a time was like, if you're unhappy as a single person, you know what'll save your life? Going on an app date every day. You know what I mean? Just game this out. Game out the magic of love and romance and just systematize it into something that an app can figure out for you. And you know what?
Also, why aren't you married? What's wrong with you?
Exactly.
It's only $5.99 a month.
I'm using this because it's such a banal example, but actually, we do this with everything. Everything. Mm-hmm. There's the right way to be. There's the right way to get it if you don't have it. And it shifts. It shifts. You can watch it slowly shift as people are like, oh, actually, the apps really suck. And it's kind of ruining my life a little bit. And I feel like it's a part-time job, or, people wanting to reconnect as people and wanting to get off their phones and realizing we have phone addiction. And that's not helping to also have our meat market of human bodies on there to swipe left and right on. I mean, it happens all the time with people's faith and religion, and happens constantly that like somebody needs to decide what a doctrine of a church is going to be, and this is what it is, and that certainty helps people feel something, you know. And the shifting, it just takes time. It's just it's
well, it takes a lot of time, and then sometimes it happens all at once. I realize it's been a while since I've made a Pixar reference, so I'm gonna fix that. The other day, my kids watched A Bug's Life, which is a great movie, by the way. If you haven't picked that up in a while, it's so good. And I was just thinking about, I'm going to put on my former libertarian kind of anti-establishment hat for a second and be like, you know, just thinking about the grasshoppers in A Bug's Life and thinking about how 80 years ago, a bunch of people made the decision that the American public didn't need to know certain things, and essentially decided that actually the people in power should probably just stay in power forever, and that information should be controlled and the narrative should be controlled by the people who knew better, who knew best. And that narrative has been pretty roundly accepted, as evidenced by that wonderful New York Times review. And but at a certain point, all the ants look up and realize, wait a second, there are a lot more of us than there are of you. And actually, the only way that you can continue to tell us what to do is if we let you.
We're a lot stronger than you say we are. And you know it, don't you?
And there's a moment at which the critical number of people realize that it doesn't have to be this way anymore, and then change happens. And we've seen this happen over and over again. And I'm now waiting for that moment that is depicted so well at the end of A Bug's Life, when all of the ants start to have the same expression on their face of the, wait a second, and they charge the grasshoppers, and the movie ends, and it's beautiful.
Let me welcome you to the barricades, comrade. and let me point out that it will shift in order to maintain a stasis and stability. But the only purpose for a dominant narrative is to maintain the status quo. And that is to preserve the hierarchy.
It's making me think about this comment that I heard on a writing panel a couple of weeks ago at a film festival. One of my favorite writers, speaking of Pixar, he's the guy who wrote Toy Story 3, Michael Arndt. Somebody was asking him about, like, what do you do when you're stuck on an idea? How do you just, like, you know, do you just run at it over and over again? And he was like, put it down, give it a break, give it a rest. He was like, you never ever stop writing. You never ever stop. It's like a jar of peanut butter. And sometimes you like gotta put it down, and it seems like it's never ever gonna open, and one day it just pops open. The reason sometimes it feels like things happen all at once is because it's like you might just have to work that peanut butter jar and then like let it sit and come back to it at some point. At some point it will unloosen. It will.
Steam engine time.
Yeah. When it's steam engine time. That's when steam engines will show up.
Can you guys bear with me while I pop into the kitchen and come out with a sweet, sweet dessert?
I'm so...
Because
are you doing literally?
I'm going to serve up some delight.
I'm
right
pretty
now.
hungry.
Oh, you
ready?
mean that?
You want to bring it on?
No.
Oh my gosh, let's go. I was like, I'm hungry too. Yeah, feed me through the screen.
I mean that rhetorically. That was a metaphor. Although, come to think of it, I made some cinnamon raisin bread that is chef's kiss. Okay. We have an update about an ancient and beloved cryptid, the Loch Ness monster, more commonly known as Nessie.
Let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
Carly asked me yesterday, she's like, what's your favorite cryptid? And I said, lake monsters. Continue, John.
Oh, my God. Well, there's so many. Okay, this is why I'm so excited to see this. On November 21st, a group called Loch Ness Exploration published a video on YouTube which describes some fascinating audio they caught on Halloween, on October 31st. Now, it's worth watching the whole video just to revel in the charming brogue of the presenter.
I know most of you right now are screaming, it's just a seal. Get a grip, guys, you've just seen a seal. Absolutely. We will put our hands up and say it could well be a seal. Absolutely. We're not going to say straight away that is Nessie, because we just don't know. None of us know. All that water, all that commotion on our arrival, was that caused by whatever we observed? We know that they were acting erratic before we arrived, and then when we put the prawns into the loch, things started to kick off. Things escalated a bit more, and it was incredibly difficult to try and capture that on camera. It was very much like, what's that game? Is it Whack-A-Mole? You've got to be very, very quick. We never ever caught something coming out of the water and then landing. We only ever caught the aftermath.
Wow. Obsessed.
Okay. Long story short, the group deployed their underwater camera rig, which they delightfully call Scrappy, on Halloween night, using store-bought prawns as bait, in the loch. And this is what they captured.
Wow. It's lovely.
Oh, that's my new favorite sound.
What on earth was that? I'm asking you because I don't know.
His reaction.
Okay.
What on earth was that?
We don't know, right? People are like, sounds like a walrus. I don't know. Now, so that is what it is, right? And they're not claiming that it's Nessie, and but that's an odd
But it's
sound.
something.
It's something, and it sounds like a big critter, right? Okay.
It also sounds like it's laughing at you.
Okay. Now, when I say, so that's not conclusive, right? But it's a cryptid. We never get anything conclusive on cryptids.
Yeah, come
that's
on.
just super cool. Put it in the pile, right? Now, when I say that Nessie is ancient, I'm not exaggerating. The Neolithic Pict people made stone carvings of a strange beast with a long neck, flippers, and elongated snout, which were found near the loch. Historians believe these are depictions of a kelpie, which is a well-known Celtic water horse or lake serpent. But of course, we should be open to the possibility that Nessie is a kelpie. The first written report of Nessie dates back to the 7th century in a biography of Saint Columba. And I'd like to read it in its entirety because nobody bothers, and it's very exciting in a 7th century way. It's called
7th century way.
Of the driving away of a certain water monster by the virtue of the prayer of the blessed man. At another time again, when the blessed man was staying for some days in the province of the Picts, he found it necessary to cross the river Ness. And when he came to the bank thereof, he sees some of the inhabitants burying a poor unfortunate little fellow, whom, as those who were burying him themselves reported, some water monster had a little before snatched at as he was swimming, and bitten with a most savage bite, and whose hapless corpse some men who came in a boat to give assistance, though too late, caught hold of by putting out hooks. The blessed man, however, on hearing this, directs that some one of his companions shall swim out and bring to him the kobold that is on the other bank, sailing it across. Now, I don't know if that means cable, not sure. On hearing this direction of the holy and famous man, Lungni Makumen, obeying without delay, throws all his clothes, except his undergarment, and casts himself into the water. Now, the monster, which before was not so much satiated as made eager for prey, was lying hid in the bottom of the river, but perceiving that the water above was disturbed by him who was crossing, suddenly emerged, and swimming to the man as he was crossing in the middle of the stream, rushed up with a great roar and open mouth. Then the blessed man looked on, while all who were there, as well as the heathen, even as the brethren, were stricken with very great terror, and, with his holy hand raised on high, he formed the saving sign of the cross in the empty air, invoked the name of God, and commanded the fierce monster, saying, "Think not to go further, nor touch thou the man. Quick, go back." Then the beast, on hearing this voice of the saint, was terrified, and fled backward more rapidly than he came, as if dragged by cords. Although before it had come so near to Lugni as he swam, that there was not more than the length of one punt pole between the man and the beast. Then the brethren, seeing that the beast had gone away, and that their comrade was returned to them safe and sound in the boat, glorified God and the blessed man, greatly marveling. Moreover, also the barbarous heathens who were there present, constrained by the greatness of that miracle, which they themselves had seen, magnified the God of the Christians. So that works well for the Catholic Church, and it works well as an early document of the Loch Ness Monster. Now, despite several famously hoaxed images and all kinds of sort of like maybe not the most successful expeditions to find Nessie, that cryptid has often been dismissed, but never disproven. And this latest piece of evidence assures that the mystery will persist, which is good for us. And it's good news for the Scottish economy because Nessie is estimated to contribute about $80 million in revenue per year.
Wow.
Really?
For the Scots people. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Showing up for the Scottish economy. That's really impressive.
Jordan, why do you like lake monsters so much?
What's not to love about lake monsters?
I know.
Honestly.
Right.
I mean, it's like if you want something that's mysterious and like a little scary and like potentially a dinosaur and just I think in general, submerged mysteries are very enthralling, partially because they're almost permanently inaccessible, right? Like I cannot go into the lake and look for myself. It is this place that I cannot go.
It's very deep.
I will die. I will die. Yeah.
Yeah, and I, I'm also, so I have a new theory, by the way. I just barely came up with it. I think it's probably right. is that
it's new and it's incontrovertible.
Yes. Is that there's actually one or more fissures in the bottom of Loch Ness that lead into even vaster subterranean bodies of water where colonies of lake monsters dwell, along with a whole other ecosystem. And because these are large, intelligent monsters, they can kind of come visit Loch Ness through the fissures in the bottom whenever they want. So that's why they are impossible. And when they die, they don't drag their corpses up to the Loch. Yeah, they're not going to float up to the. Yeah. So yeah, that's my theory.
Fantastic.
This is what I wish, because you're right, Tom. This was delicious. This was like the treat of the day. And I wish that there was a way that we could stop pouring all of our capitalistic energy fuel into things that are going to make us addicted and miserable. And we could do what that company in Texas, what is it called? Colossal, is doing, which is basically just like, can we just use the money for the cool, interesting stuff and the mysteries? Could we just pour money into exploring the ocean and like understanding the fissures at the bottom of the Loch Ness? Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be cool? But we won't. We won't. We will just continue to flood it into things that make us less human. And I would love to understand more sea floors. And I would love to feel like we were discovering the mysteries of the deep.
The thing is, if you went and talked to 99.99% of the human population of the earth, they would go, yes, that's what I want.
Right.
I want things that make my life better. I want my kids to be safe. I want to know more about the ocean and the world around me and space. I want my fellow inhabitants of the planet to be happy and well-fed and well-adjusted. The end. Right. And I know, like, again, welcome to the barricades, but like saying we'll never do it, I don't buy that.
Okay.
Absolutely a better world is possible. It's always been possible, and it's always been made better, and there's little variations or whatever, but like, I think, and I said this, I think when we first started the show, I was talking about a great awakening. We are at, I think, a spiritual and intellectual inflection point as human beings. I can see it. And you can cloak it in silliness like the age of Aquarius or whatever. Not that that's necessarily silly, but you can dismiss it as such. But I see it all around in the banal and in the extraordinary, in myself and in you guys and in people I don't know, but come across. So if you say, this is what I want, this is what my dream is, don't tamp it down with it'll never happen. Because the fact that you dreamed it, to some degree, made it real.
Well, there's already proof that there are people who are putting their entire lives and all their time into this. I mean, I just had a friend a couple weeks ago who was watching something very similar to Planet Earth, but I think it had a different title, and hadn't believed in God in about 10 years. And he was like, I think I do again now. And I was like,
yeah, okay.
That's amazing, and that's what we're talking about here. And we don't ever really have to give up hope on that kind of thing, especially when you're witnessing it in each other. Like you said, there's something so cool about a feeling of a groundswell, which we all know because we've been alive for as long as we have. The feeling that all your conversations start to take a little bit of a different kind of bend. That it does seem like people are getting tired of certain things, and it's everybody is getting tired of them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's something going on.
The ants are starting to assume that expression.
Yes. Thank goodness.
Yeah. There are more of us than there are of you.
As a final little treat, do you know who voices Flick, the main character of...
Oh my gosh!
It's Dave Foley.
It's Dave
Who
Foley.
we also shared the stage with.
We did.
And he's so good. He's so good. It's like one of the best voice acting performances.
Oh, I've always loved him.
So good.
Always loved him.
He's incredible.
Yeah. I think he and his friend are doing a podcast called...
Really?
Really?
With Dave and Tom. Yes. Highly recommended. And we're going to get them on the show one day.
Very funny fellow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, insanely gifted man. And I loved chatting with him about the fact that when they started the podcast, they had an intention of covering broader ground, but the UFO...
They got sucked him in.
The UFO conversation completely sucked him in. I thought that was such a good demonstration of what you were talking about earlier, Tom, that it's it really is a bottomless well.
No, it has a gravitational pull.
Endless threads to pull,
Yep.
As you said, Mel, it demands much and returns little.
Thank goodness for the Loch Ness Monster to save us.
Yes, Nessie. Nessie to the rescue.
To pull us into the deep, warm waters of the mystery.
Take me.
Take me.
ASMR Disclosure is a movie you can watch, or you can just watch 30-minute videos of a very charming Scottish man telling you, I don't know, how they bought prawns from a grocery store and put them in a plastic box. And
I'm going to go put that lake monster laugh on loop and just fall asleep to that tonight.
It's your new ringtone.
Yeah.
Delightful.
A couple of quick reminders before you go. First off, if you haven't left a rating on your platform of choice, please do that. One of the first things people look at when they're judging a show by its cover is the number of ratings it has. So if you dig what we're doing, show it with stars. In the epilogue, we talk about why being deceived doesn't make you a chump, how cavemen stereotypes were actually reflections of mid-century misogyny and violence, and the study that shows how shame causes repeated bad behavior while self-acceptance corrects it. If you want to hear it, go to godsghostsufos.com or find the link in the description. See you next week, friends.